For years, I believed that personal growth meant consuming more books, more podcasts, more productivity hacks. I thought I was getting better because I knew more. But at some point, a harsh truth hit me. I wasn't evolving, I was just getting overwhelmed. And when I looked around, I realized most people were stuck in the same trap. We're busy, we're learning, we're collecting information, but are we actually changing? Most of us aren't, because we're growing sideways, not upward. We're adding more knowledge on top of shaky foundations. Today, I want to offer you something different. Not morning routines, not cold showers, not a list of 50 habits, just 4 fundamental habits, the kind the world's most resilient and high-performing people actually use. If you rebuild your life around these 4, everything else follows effortlessly. Let's begin. 1. The empty hour, your brain's reset button. This habit sounds counterintuitive in Western culture where productivity is worshipped. Spend 1 hour a day doing absolutely nothing. No phone, no books, no stimulation. Just you, your breath, and whatever your mind floats to. Why? Because your brain needs space to synthesize information, generate ideas, and access deeper clarity. Neuroscience calls this the default mode network, the state where creativity, insight, and emotional processing happen. History quietly proves it. Newton discovered gravity while resting under a tree. Archimedes had his breakthrough in a bath. Einstein said his best ideas came while shaving. Great ideas rarely show up when you're forcing your mind to think. They appear when you give your mind room to wander. Try this for 30 days. Walk without your phone. Sit by a window. Stare at the ceiling if you must. You'll be shocked by how clearly you start seeing your own life. 2. The 1% evolution principle. Most people think growth comes from big breakthroughs, a new job, a major achievement, a sudden burst of motivation. But real transformation rarely arrives in explosions. It arrives in increments. Here's the real principle. Pick one skill and make a tiny improvement to it every single day. Not 5 skills, not an entire self-improvement wish list, just one. If you improve by just 1% today and another 1% tomorrow, it might feel like nothing is changing. 1% is too small to notice in a single moment, but small progress isn't meant to impress you immediately, it's meant to accumulate. And here's the part people often overlook. Mathematically, improving 1% every day doesn't make you slightly better after a year. It makes you about 37 times better than where you started. Not because you worked harder or pushed yourself to extremes, but because progress compounds the same way interest does. Growth multiplies when you give it consistency. You don't need dramatic breakthroughs. You need tiny upgrades that are repeatable, sustainable, and consistent enough for time to amplify them. Small steps don't stay small. With compounding, they eventually become transformation. 3. The weekly check-in, meeting the future you. Every week, choose a time when you're unreachable, no notifications, no noise. Then ask yourself 3 simple questions. 1. Who was I this week? 2. Who do I want to be next week? 3. What's the gap between those 2 versions? This is not a to-do list. It's a becoming list. Most people spend their lives running endlessly, productive, busy, exhausted, yet not actually moving forward. Reflection is what separates movement from progress. Harvard followed thousands of people for a decade and found those who regularly reflect earn more, perform better, and report higher life satisfaction. Your brain hates ambiguity. When things are unclear, it defaults to old patterns, not because they're good for you, but because they're predictable. The human brain is wired for certainty. It would rather stay in a familiar problem than step into an unfamiliar solution. That's why clarity is powerful. Once you define who you want to become, your brain finally has a target it can organize itself around. Uncertainty creates hesitation. Clarity creates direction. Give yourself 20 minutes a week to get specific about your future self, not in a motivational way, but in a neurological way. Those minutes reduce cognitive noise, calm the amygdala, and give your prefrontal cortex space to plan instead of react. You're not just reflecting, you're giving your brain the information it needs to build a better version of you, on purpose, not by accident. 4. Do one thing every day that scares you. Growth doesn't happen in comfort, and comfort will always try to seduce you back into who you used to be. So here's the final habit. Every day, do something that pushes you outside your comfort zone. Not reckless things, just uncomfortable ones. Start a conversation with someone new. Say no when you usually avoid conflict. Call the person you've been putting off. Share your idea publicly. Try something you've been avoiding. Your brain is wired to avoid fear, but every time you face something small that scares you, Your brain rewrites its beliefs. I can handle this. I'm stronger than I thought. I'm improving. Champions aren't fearless. They're willing to be uncomfortable more often. Now that you understand the 4 habits, the real question is how to build them into your life without burning out. Most people fail not because the habits are hard, but because they try to activate everything at once, and the brain collapses under the weight of sudden change. So instead of forcing transformation, you layer it. Slow, deliberate, sustainable. Here's how a true reinvention works. Phase 1, days 1 to 30. Start with the foundation. Habit 1, the empty hour. Give your mind space to reset. Let clarity return. This is end productivity. This is calibration. Without a clear mind, everything else becomes noise. Phase 2, days 31 to 60. Once you can hear yourself think again, introduce Habit 2, the 1% skill. Keep your empty hour, even if you compress it to 30 minutes. Now you're adding direction to clarity, tiny, compounding progress toward a single skill that matters. Phase 3, days 61 to 90. With clarity and momentum in place, layer in Habit 3 and Habit 4. A weekly meeting with your future self, and one small act of discomfort each day. This is where the shift becomes visible. Reflection gives your brain a map. Discomfort gives it courage. By the end of 90 days, all 4 habits begin to operate like a system. Not perfectly, but naturally. You'll feel them blend together. Space, progress, direction, courage. And the truth is, this system doesn't require as much time as people imagine. Around 2 hours a day to rebuild your entire identity isn't excessive, especially when most of us spend far more than that scrolling without remembering what we saw.